Good morning, everyone. Today's session will be on The End of Living, The Beginning of Survival by Chief Seattle. Uh, Before moving on into the lesson, I would like to give you an introduction to Chief Seattle and also what this particular speech is going to tell you about. So, Chief Seattle was born on the Black River near the Blake Island, which is now the city of Kent in Washington. His father was the leader of a Squamish tribe, which is a Native American tribe, and his mother belonged to the Duwamish tribe. So, at a very young age itself, he became a reputed leader of the Native Americans and also a well known warrior, and he's also a very noted orator in his native language, and he understood the real intention of the white settlers, which was to grab their land, but he always pursued an accommodated position with them. So he died on 7th June 1866, and the city of Seattle in Washington is named after him. The Squamish tribe always honors Chief Seattle on the third week of August as the Chief Seattle's Day. The present speech, The End of Living, The Beginning of Survival, was delivered on March 11, 1854, though the date is disputed. That is taken as the date on which this particular speech was delivered by Chief Seattle. Governor Isaac Ingalls Stevens called a meeting with Chief Seattle to discuss the surrender or the sale of the native land to the white settlers. Chief on that day spoke in the Lushoot Seed language, which is their native language, Lushhoot, Lushoot Seed, SEED, Lushoot Seed language, and various versions of the speech exist due to the translations of the particular speech into different languages. Therefore, the authenticity of the speech is always in doubt. The first translation came up in the flowery Victorian English in the Seattle Sunday Star by Henry Smith on 29th October 1887. And another version came up in 1960s by William Arrow Smith, who removed all this Victorian and Greek overtones and converted it into a simple, much more simple version. But the present extract which you have to study here is based on Ted Perry's script for the promotion of the environmental movie Home, which was produced by the Southern Baptist Convention in 1972. Speech is very much identical in meaning and spirit to the ecocentric worldview. The speech emphasizes on the interconnectedness and interdependence of the world of living and the non-living. So in the speech, Chief Seattle says that all forms of life are interconnected in a network. Thus, he accepts the inherent values of non-human life. But in Western tradition, nature exists for the sake of human beings. But Chief Seattle reminds us that we men are just another important member among many other members within the chain of environment, or within the nature's chain. So. We can find that the Western tradition doesn't care for the well-being and the flourishing together of both the human as well as non-human life on this earth together. So the speech in itself discusses two different environmental concepts. One, it is the shallow ecology, and the other one, it is the deep ecology. So mainly the speech points out that there is a wrong sense of perception about nature among us. There should be a change in our understanding or in our perception of the nature in order to protect our environment or our nature. So our priority should be to protect our environment in order to bring in a sustainable environment. That means the natural resources should not be exhausted. The speech shows us that there is a need to conserve biodiversity, and it is a high call of the time right now, and there is a need to use resources more equitably. It is necessary to develop a new world on the basis of ecocentric values, and thus bring up a sustainable society. Thus, we should help in order to diminish the not to diminish the prospects of the future generation, because our overuse of the natural resources will lead to the diminishing of the prospects of the future generations. And the Native Americans say that we didn't inherit the land from our ancestors, but we borrowed it from our children. So it shows the importance that they give to the environment, as they want to preserve it for the future generations to come. So here, Chief Seattle's speech reminds that the modern government, all kinds of models that they of the models of development that the modern government bring in should safeguard the interest of all, in order all, including both the human and the non-human creatures on this earth, for the realization of a better world for tomorrow. In this essay, we can find that the idea of buying or selling the land or cruelty to animals was strange to the Native Americans. And in the context of symbiosis and deep ecology, the speech assumes a special significance when Chief Seattle says that, I quote him, "The earth doesn't belong to man, but the man belongs to the earth." And this we know. All things are connected like the blood which unites one family, and all things are connected. Okay, this is what Chief Seattle says. So a powerful plea for the respect of Native American rights and environmental values is made by Chief Seattle in this speech. He criticized the white people's imperialistic attitude and their way of reckless developments which affect the natural environment a lot. So he warned us against the rapid progress of Western civilization and the degradation of nature and ecological imbalance that it is causing, and pitched for the need for the need for protecting the nature. So now, in the speech, Chief Seattle tells us that the president in Washington sends their interest in buying the land of the Native Americans or the Red Indians. So, but the whole idea seems very strange to the Native Americans, because they clearly know that the freshness of the air in their land, the sparkle of the water, the sky, the warmth of their land, all these things they do not own all these things. So it seems very strange to them, and they ask the question that how can they sell something if they do not own it. So every part of this land of the Native Americans, including the sharp leaves that grow on the pine trees, the sandy shores, mist in the deep forest, every open space, and even the humming of small insects in their land, all these seem sacred for the Native Americans or the Red Indians. Even the sap that comes out of the trees of the sap refers to the juice that come from a cut in the tree. Okay, even that sap that comes out of the tree contains the memory of the red man, and the memory and experience of the natives of their land are sacred. According to Chief Seattle, nature has given them everything that they need to live in this world, on this earth. He fears that the human civilization may face a great trouble in future if we don't respect the environmental values. Ancestors of the white men, Chief Seattle tell in his speech that ancestors of the white men, once they die, they forget this land and they move on to walk among the stars. But it really seems that they don't seem to love this land once they die. But the Red Indians ancestors are not like that, because the Red Indians always treat the lands on which they live as their mother, and therefore they treat the earth as their motherland. So they never forget the earth that had given them their being, and continue to visit their loved ones, the ancestors, the dead ancestors. Chief Seattle tell us that their dead ancestors continue to visit their loved ones to console, comfort, and guide them. And so, for them, earth is a part of their life, and they are a part of earth too. So the fears are that their ideas won't be understood by the whites or the white settlers. For them, earth is part of their life, and they are part of the earth too. But this idea won't be understood by the white settlers. Okay, so the flowers are their sisters. The horse, the deer, the great eagle, all of them are their brothers. All these creatures are their brothers. They treat the rocky crest, the juices in their meadows, the body heat of the pony, and even the man. For the Red Indians, all these concepts, all these beings belong to a single family. They are part of the same family. So according to Seattle, there are so many cultural differences between the red Indians and the whites, so that the union or a mutual understanding between these two separate groups looks very unlikely, because these two distinct groups, uh, they have two different destinies, and they have different origins. So their ideas, he feels that their ideas cannot be comprehended into a single unit. Seattle tell the readers that the great chief of Washington, which is Isaac Ingalls Stevens, sends his word to buy the natives land, promising them to reserve a better place for these native Indians to live comfortably. So in that case, Chief Seattle tells us that the white chief would be the chief of Washington would be their father, and the Native Americans would be his children. So here the Chief Seattle tells us that we will try to consider your offer, though it will be very difficult for us, as our land is completely sacred for us. If we sell this land, you must remember that this land is sacred to us, and also you must teach your children that it is sacred for them too. The shining water in the rivers and the streams of this land are not just water, but these are the blood of our ancestors. The memories in the and it remarks the memories in the life of Native Americans. So the murmuring of the water is actually the voice of their ancestors. So the rivers are their brothers, and which satisfy their thirst, and also which feed their children. Also, Chief Seattle tell the whites that they should remember to teach their children that the rivers are not only the rivers are not only the brothers of the natives, but also the brother of the whites too. Okay, and should show the rivers. And he asked the chief of the Seattle that you should also, if you're buying our land, you should also show the rivers the same kind of kindness and care that you would give to one of your brothers. And the chief says that we know that you won't understand our ways, because one piece of land is just the same for same for you. Once you once you conquer it, and once you utilize all its resources in order to satisfy your needs, you leave it behind and you move on. You take up another piece of land. For whites, the land is not his brother but his enemy. It is something that he doesn't care that he is capturing a land in which his future generation has to live in. And also Chief Seattle tell us that he doesn't care, the whites he refers to the whites, and he tells us that the whites doesn't care his forefathers graves, or neither his children's birthright. Seattle says that it is so kind of the whites, that is the white chief, who send them their interest in buying the land of the natives. So it is so kind of the whites to offer the natives their goodwill and friendship, because Chief Seattle knows that the government has no need of the natives' friendship in return. Chief Seattle speaks of the deplorable condition of his people right now, and he remembers that once they had filled the entire country, but now there are only a few people left in their tribes. So they are on the verge of an extinction. So actually, they don't need any vast land anymore. And here Chief Seattle mainly accuses the white people for their forceful exertion of their ways into the native land, and also for the doom of the red Indians. Okay, so this is the reason why Chief Seattle is now at least not going for a war against the government, and it is ready for considering their proposal of buying the native land, because they don't need this much big land anymore, because they are on the verge of the Native Americans are on the verge of extinction. Okay, now the white people have and the Chief Seattle in his speech tell us that the white people have no feelings for their ancestors, and they wander far away from the graves of their ancestors, and without any regret. And the whites soon forget their father's grave and their children's birthright. And he says that the earth which is the mother, and the sky, which is the brother, are treated by the whites as something to be sold. Only the whites only attach materialistic values with these things, and they take it as something to be, they take the earth, the sky, as something to be bought, plundered and sold. So the whites greed to swallow up this entire earth will only leave behind a desert. This is what Chief Seattle tried to point out, and this will be the result of the appetite for money, which the white is showing more and more. Seattle says that their ways are different from that of whites, because the sight of white men's eyes actually pain the eyes of red Indians, as there is no quiet place in the cities of white men. There are only confused noises, and it is just like a kind of insult to the ears for red man, or the red Indians, or the Native Americans. So there is no place in the cities where the people can hear unfolding of leaves in the spring, or the rustling of the insects' wings. What and Chief Seattle asked the question that what is life itself if you cannot enjoy the arguments of frogs near the ponds at night, or what he tried to say is that if you cannot enjoy the pleasures of that the nature or the environment give us, then what is the use of this kind of life that you are living in? Instead of this clatter in the cities, what the red Indians prefer is a soft sound of winds moving across the pond, the smell of wind cleansed by the midday rain or scented by the pine. So the air is precious to the red Indians, because Chief Seattle says that beast, tree, man, all living creatures share the same breath. And whites doesn't understand this, because he is like a, he means the whites doesn't understand, because whites are like dying man who is impossible to come out of his own unpleasant smell. Okay, so but once you buy this land, Chief Seattle ask the white people that once the white people buy this land, then they should remember to treat this air as precious, and that it is shared by all the creatures that life supports. The wind that and also Chief Seattle reminds that the wind that gave the first breath to their forefathers is also the one that receives their last breath too. And Chief Seattle tell the white men that if you buy this land, you should keep it so sacred that even the whites can come here and enjoy the wind sweetened by the meadow flowers every time. Okay, and Chief Seattle says that we red Indians, the Native Americans, will consider your offer of buying this land on one condition, that the white men will always treat the beast of this land as their brothers. Okay, so and Chief Seattle tell that maybe you would feel that I am savage or uncivilized, and this is my way of saying it, or this is my way of life. And he says that he have seen many buffaloes, thousands of buffaloes rotting in the grasslands, being shot by the white men from a passing train. Chief Seattle tell us that the red Indians or the Native Americans too kill the buffaloes, but it is only for just staying alive. And he asked the whites a question that how does your pleasure of killing or your pleasure of shooting becomes more important than the life of a buffalo? Here he quotes that how does it become more important for the whites, the smoking hose how does it become more their smoking hose become more important for the white? The smoking hose refers to the gun or the passing train. How does that kind of pleasure becomes more important than the life of the buffaloes? And Chief Seattle tell the white men that once all the buffaloes or all the beasts of this land are gone, then the human beings will die out of the loneliness of their spirit. Okay, they will die out of the loneliness, they will die out of the being alienated. Okay, and he also reminds us that what happens to the beast will soon happen to man, because everything is connected. Nature, all beings in nature are interconnected with each other. So if something adverse happen to one being, will soon happen to the other being. So whatever happens to the buffaloes now will soon happen to man. It is what Chief Seattle says. So, Chief Seattle asked the white men to teach their children that the ground beneath their feet contains the ashes of the Native Americans or the Red Indians' grandfathers, and tell the white men's children that the earth is rich with the memories of the Native Americans. Those who are the kith and kin of the Native Americans, those who are closely related to the Native Americans. So, so that the Chief Seattle asked the white men to do all this, that their children, at least the white men's children, will respect the land. And he also asked the white men to teach their children that earth is their mother, and whatever happens to the mother will soon befall on her children also. So if men spit on the ground, they are spitting on themselves. So earth doesn't belong to man, and it's man who belong to earth, and all are connected like the blood relations. This is what Chief Seattle want the white men to teach their children. And the white men think, Chief Seattle tell us that white men think that he is superior to everyone. But he reminds Chief Seattle reminds the white men that man didn't weave the web of life. He is just merely a strand in it. So whatever he does to this web, he is doing it to himself. So and also Chief Seattle tell us that the white man considers God like a friend with whom he can walk and talk with shoulder on shoulder, with shoulder to shoulder. So even though this is the case, the whites too cannot escape the common destiny. This is what Chief Seattle reminds the white men, that is, no one will be spared from the hands of time, death and decay, and death is this common destiny. And finally, he also reminds us that uh, death is that is a common destiny that even the white men cannot defy. The white received all the love and care of God, and the tribal people have been deprived of it in some way. And God has finally, and also finally, it has led to the would say to their meager existence of the Native Americans. So Seattle says that it is not so. White people think that God has showered all his blessings upon them, but the white men forget that the God is same. The God of the white Americans and also the Native Americans or the Red Indians are the same God. He is the God of this earth, and his compassion is equal to both the Native Americans as well as to the whites. And so. But the white settlers think that they can own him. That means they can own God. But no, it is not possible. And so, if you this earth is precious to the God who is its creator. So, earth being precious to its creator, who is God Himself. If white men do any harm to the earth, he is trying to contempt its own creator, that is the God. Okay, and so the whites are being reminded by Chief Seattle that whatever you do now, it will result upon you sooner or later. And he also reminds the white that one day everyone will move out of this earth. Maybe the whites will move much sooner than many other tribes. So if you try to contaminate your bed, then you will suffocate in your own bed and die out there itself. Okay, now Chief Seattle tell the white men that, but even when you die, you will be shining because of the heavenly glow uh, uh, that God has, the heavenly glow of God, who has brought you white people to this earth and has given you uh, a special purpose, uh, a special purpose, and has granted you a superiority over this land and over all other people, including the Red Indians. And this because it might be because the God has given you a superiority because you were for a very special purpose, but you had taken up it in this manner. So and the Chief Seattle, while trying to conclude his speech, he tells us that that kind of fate which you are going to create by slaughtering all the buffaloes and other beasts in this land, and by taming all the wild horses and their energy, and by blotting or vanishing the secret corners of the forest, which till then contained the contain the presence and memories of many men, and by demolishing the entire view of hills filled with the fruit trees, by replacing all these you by replacing all these by the IT cables or by the talking wires, maybe telephone wires, or he is referring to the whole process of modernization here. When you try to replace all these beautiful natural views uh, with your cables, wires, and all these things, we don't know what kind of fate or destiny that you are going to bring into. And whatever be the kind of fate or destiny which you are trying to create by doing all this demolitions to the nature or the natural resources, all that destiny is really unknown to us, and it is also really unacceptable for us. So now he ask the question, where are the tickets? Answer is gone. Where is the eagle? Gone. So he tells us that when everything is gone and when only man exists here in amidst the cables and wires and all those concrete structures, he tells us that from there it begins the end of living and the beginning of survival. When everything else is gone in this earth and when man is alone amidst these wires, cables, and the concrete structures, there happens the end of living. From then onwards, you will stop living. From then onwards, you will start to survive an adverse situation. So, when everything is gone, you will be put into an adverse situation and you will have to learn to survive in order to overcome the difficulties when you exist alone. So, once everything is gone, there starts the end of your living. From there onwards, you stop living, and from there onwards, you start to survive. Okay, survive means you try to move through a adverse situation. Living is just living in a way refers to enjoying every aspect of nature or every other aspect in your life. So here the poet tells us that once everything is gone, then starts the end of living and the beginning of survival. Hope you understood this lecture very well and hope it will be useful for you. Thank you. Winding up the session here. If you have any queries, you can mail me personally. Please do subscribe, watch, like, and share it maximum to the student community so that these videos will be useful for them. Thank you.